Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Magic Arena, and today we are going to be continuing our series on updating the precons, and it's not getting any easier. For the most part, it looks like they somehow managed to force in the archetypes that are on the way out rather than on the way in. Unless something changes ahead in upcoming sets, that is going to be what it's going to look like, and it's not actually looking very good. But that's for the enemy colors so far. Maybe there's some hope for the allied colors. Maybe we get hope for the enemy colors in Crimson Vow. That said, it is the turn of green black, and we're gonna take a look at the original growing hunger deck first to talk about what worked, what didn't quite work. So Vorinclex definitely works. The Lijar Glade Warden, no, you don't have the time to do this. Skyclave Shadowcat, same thing, not much time for that. Power Word Kill is actually pretty good. Sometimes it does get affected by the meta. There is a Black White Angels meta, there is a Blue Red Dragons meta. No Demon meta quite yet, but it's not exactly a good time for Power Word Kill. The Poison the Cup is fine, but I eventually subbed it out. Ranger class work. Feign Death, the problem is not many people were running that much removal, so that was a bit of an outie. Struggle for Skemfar was also a bit of a question. But all in all, most of the big play was not such a big play. And we didn't really need the emergence sequence that badly. With all those cuts, the Dragon's Guard Elite also got cut down the way. So, but we still have more or less a bit of a decent shell there. So let's take a look at what we ended up playing instead. So we buffed up the mana base as usual for all 4 pathways, 2 snarls. We supplemented the Vorinclex with a Nissa of Shadowed Bows because we do need ways to get creatures back, and I'm not usually a fan of holding up the 1 black mana for Feign Death. Also because not every creature removal effect is a destroy creature. Sometimes there is a different effect, so it does miss at times. That's why I opted to run Nissa for this one. There's a Turn Timber Symbiosis to give us technically an extra land, but also a way to dig in for one of our bigger threats. Gragma was good. Technically, I could run a second one. I decided to run Sarulf as another way to give us a bit of a way out. Also, being able to exile is kind of relevant. Kept the Moss Pit Skeletons, kept the Haggard Constrictors, begrudgingly kept the Master Symmetrists, reduced the number of tenured Incasters, added the Soul Shatter for extra removal. Most of the removal got replaced with Infernal Grasp. I added Tangled Florahedron to give us extra creatures and basically lands in case we need it. The other addition was pretty much Contortionist Troop. Played mostly for its flexibility. Sometimes it adds +1/+1 counters, but it's really just there to be flexible. So that was pretty much it. How happy am I with this deck? As I already mentioned, it felt like a deck that's on the way out rather than a deck that's on the way in. So it's very hard to say. For the most part, if you're playing Golgari, you're playing green black, you're mostly playing the Pest Sacrifice deck. Sometimes you might be playing the life gain deck, but that's really more green white nowadays. So it's very hard to find it's very hard to find a decent middle ground, especially if we are intentionally limiting ourselves in mythics. And also doesn't help if the game decides that, you know what, let's start you off with a disadvantage. That's an auto mulligan. This one is a better keep. We have at least 4 lands. Though we probably will bin one Infernal Grasp for now. Let's hope our opponent is not too aggro. Okay, that's fine. So we'll lead off on Snarl, show the Woodland Chasm. Opponents at white-red. We got ourselves a Contortionist Troop, but we're basically not in a hurry to drop these guys. Especially if our opponent's already shown that this is their basic removal suite. That said, I already regret binning the Infernal Grasp. Our opponent's definitely gonna... Oh, they still haven't dropped anything yet. So... with that in mind, we will drop the Tangled... We will drop the Tangled Veil. I will drop one Contortionist Troop. Let's see if we can bait our opponent to do something. Because at least next turn we will have... Yeah, they're definitely a burn deck of sorts. This is bait. That's just bait right there. Opponent... leaving it alone is very interesting. What do they have instead? Not exactly in protection colors either. Venerable Warsinger. Knowing that, I'm actually gonna hold back the Soul Shatter because our opponent... I'm trying to remember if there is a protection spell. I'm pretty sure there isn't, but I'm holding back anyway. This feels like some weird Velomachus deck, if I'm not mistaken. To be honest, I'm really not sure what our opponent's up to. That was a weird drop, if you ask me. Opponent goes Akiri. Oh, it's a sort of equipment deck. I think the opponent might have taken notes from me. So the important thing is to keep our opponent off of creatures. Next turn, we'll probably just Ranger class power it through. Yeah, actually, if this is an equipment deck, it's not looking very good for the... if your starters are 3 drops. You generally want... Oh. Not looking good at all. So, Woodland Chasm. Play out the Ranger class. Level. We'll swing with the Contortionist Troop. It might eat the burns. It might finally eat the burn spell. It feels like we were long overdue for a burn spell, especially if our shock. Okay, yeah, that was the burn spell I was expecting. So we will drop the second Contortionist Troop. Also, given how much land we have, the Ranger class is going to be very important, assuming our opponent doesn't have a decent follow-up for this. Problem is, by burning most of our early well, it's not even most of our early removal, that was just 2 pieces. Pacifism, that's fine. So we got a Moss... Okay, so it's actually not looking good for a Moss Pit Skeleton. We'll swing first, see what our opponent does. And yeah, I kind of want to make this live. Infernal Grasp. I'm gonna just play the skeleton as is. Let's see if we can get our opponent to... Oh, and we can also put counters on stuff. We'll put it on the wolf just to make sure we can keep the Coven. Contortionist Troop's still useful even when they're pacified or bound up or something. Opponent going for return pass caller, probably to buy back shock. That seems to be... Okay, so we will destroy this. Just to put it out the shock range. And I'm not gonna waste a... I don't think our opponent's gonna bother shocking the Contortionist troop, but they probably will at this point. Which would be a real coup for us. Now, we still are in trouble in the sense... Well, we do have lethal on them. Now, if we can only stop drawing lands. I'm gonna spread this out a bit. Opponent did not have anything. They just gave up at that point. Okay, so we kind of survived that one only because our opponent had surprisingly little action there. I'm suspecting our opponent had an A+. Basically, the problem with equipment, as I mentioned in the upgrading the Armed and Dangerous deck video, is that an A+B deck has the problem if you have too much of one and none of the other. In that case, I think our opponent might have had too many equipment, too much equipment, I would say, and not enough creatures. Not having the card selection really hurt our opponent in that case. I will also note that I'm so tempted to cut even more lands. I'm tempted to add more of the ETB tap lands, like more Tangled, more Florahedrons and whatnot. We even have Malakir Rebirth as an option if we want black mana. That said, we are going to lead off on Tangled Florahedron first. Yeah, Master Symmetrist, I do want to find a good replacement for this. The only reason this is here is because it gives all our creatures trample for the most part. Counter or no counter, I could have easily subbed this with the Gnarlid Colony, but I don't really need any more 2/2s, so that's kind of my thinking. Do have to be careful here. We only have a single piece of removal to protect us. Opponents. Yeah, if I don't need to show the Necroblossom Snarl, I probably won't have to. Opponent does have a bit of a slow start. Technically, so do we. Like, there's a very good chance by the time I'm able to play out Nissa, she gets countered. I might end up just playing Master Symmetrist. In fact, the trick I can do is, like, on my turn, then play Nissa, play the land. Ooh, Smoldering Egg. Now, if that was Power Word Kill, it would not kill the egg. Yeah, that was kind of irrelevant. I should not have bothered with that. Might scare the living daylights out of our opponent, but I doubt it. I do say that the one minor benefit of Master Symmetrist is that okay, that we can pseudo protect it with Snakeskin Veil if we decide to play it later. The benefit now is that at the very least, it's not going to die. It's not going to die to Frostbite. It'll take 2 Frostbites to kill it. So next turn, I want to just play Nissa Shadowed Bows, play the Forest, then swing with one of these guys, probably just the Tangled Veil. Then hold back Snakeskin Veil hold back Snakeskin Veil as needed. We should get a bit of an early start here. It does become an issue if we're concerned that our opponent might have. Oh, opponent's timing out here. I'm usually the one that's actually scared of the blue-red deck. At least in the regular play queue, it pretty much it usually means mill. Opponent might be missing blue, so that's probably the issue. Prismari Command just doming me, giving themselves a treasure. I don't see the reason for our opponent to do this right away. It's not like we have some spectacle anymore. Our opponent, if our opponent was looking for mana, they were better off doing draw 2, discard 2, rather than just doming us for 2 at random. This might eat a counterspell. In which case, I would appreciate it because we know our opponent has mana troubles already as it is. Wait, let's play the land first. Now, technically, if our opponent has a bounce spell, we would have gotten the trigger for nothing, but you know what? If it makes them spend their mana, I'm all for it. Now, they could bounce this one with a Fading Hope. Again, I don't mind it that much. If they decide to go for Frostbite, then we have a defensive option. Okay, opponent's gonna let this go. It looks weird. It's like our opponent was really stuck. So there's also a chance our opponent could just double Frostbite Nissa if Shadowed Bows, but in that case the damage has already been done, sort of. Next turn we can just drop another Master Symmetrist and let's see. Burn down the house. Each creature, each planeswalker. That's fine. That's sets us to 1. Sets us to 2. Sets us to 3.
The land is savage and defiant.
We're not gonna cast it. Well, we're obviously not casting Contortionist Troop. I actually might want to just hold this back like as a big X5. Opponent now has 7 mana. They could Oh, they're just going to... Oh, Desperation Memory Deluge. Okay. Yeah, looks like our opponent's having mana troubles here. Frostbite. Okay, I figured they'd finally draw one.
Doomed my home.
They'll need... That's at least 1 less Frostbites for me to worry about with this guy here. Okay, Ranger class doing what it does best. Our opponent might still have the back-to-backs, which is why I prefer the Snakeskin Veil. If I did the Feign Death, I would not be crashing in for damage. Now, I could choose to drop the Contortionist Troop now, but considering our opponent's mana, my concern is really a burn spell at this point. Fading Hope, fine. Well, actually, no. Fading Hope would be just as bad. That's why I'm willing to play Snakeskin Veil. Opponent is missing that 1 other blue mana if they want to do an Alrund's Epiphany chain. Dragon's Fire. I have to do this now because I have no idea what dragon they plan to show. And opponent concedes. Looks like they did not have the second one. Whew, we barely survived that one, though. No, actually, no, we were not taking damage, but it was really concerning. Any big drop our opponent would have really wiped us there. We were just really fortunate that our opponent had mana troubles there. So far, 2 wins. Yeah, we've been having major problems getting past 2 wins at this point, but then again, sometimes you run into, it's hard to say who we run up against. Sometimes we run up against the guys that are farming for money, which is a very noble effort. So, this is interesting. I'm tempted to do the Moss Pit Skeleton right away. So that means Woodland Chasm Forest Skeleton. Actually, no, it would be Woodland Chasm Pathway Skeleton. Now, the reason to hold up any basics is in case we draw one of the 2 snarls. If our opponent decides to take this out, I probably don't want to buy it back. I probably want to put the other Moss Pit, play the other Moss Pit first. The Moss Pit Skeleton's job is to be additional card advantage over time because we keep buying it back. Does our opponent want to bounce it? They could wait for their turn. They might just take the 2 then bounce it afterwards, which is another thing. So we'll play the Florahedron as a land. Play the other Moss Pit Skeleton. Now we are opening ourselves up to like a crippling fear. But we do have the Oran Reef Ooze here as a backup play. Opponent's sitting on 2. I'm assuming one's an Epiphany, the other's a counterspell until our opponent does otherwise. Let's hold that back for now. Sarulf actually not a very great matchup here if our opponent's playing control. So we'll play the Florahedron again, but we'll hold back. Our opponent needs to answer this now. Actually, Doomscar's now definitely a possibility. I'm waiting for our opponent to just fire one off. Okay, they're probably gonna Behold the Multiverse. Oh no, they're just gonna bounce one back. Okay, that's fine. And so they're having mana issues. They're just if they're going for the environmental sciences. Also, the Sarulf is actually feels more like a sideboard card now that I feel. So maybe over time, I'd probably move this to sideboard. Opponent's probably, yeah, they're missing the double blue. They want to get Saw It Coming live. So we hit a Woodland Chasm. We'll swing first, as always. And what we can do is just play the Forest, play the Moss Pit Skeleton, they know, kick. Then we can probably just buy it back next turn by playing Oran Reef Ooze. Assuming our opponent doesn't counter it, but if our opponent lets it go, they probably have a Doomscar, or even a Blood in the Snow, though they have nothing to follow it up with. If they counter this, divide by 0, they're probably going for the... Okay, they're still going for environmental sciences. They're not going for the Mascot Exhibition quite yet. One's still sitting on 2 of these, though. Divide by 0 is more of a tempo play rather than an actual counter. It will benefit our opponent greatly if they were hitting their land drops. They are, but with cost. They're forced to play environmental sciences every time to ensure their land drops. Not a bad thing. Opponent. Should be close to Epiphany mana at this point. Now, I'm not sure if our opponent is possibly running Jawari Disruption. I'm tempted to just play the Forest just to find out. The opponent lets it go, they probably have a Doomscar. Now, Doomscar at 3 mana, not so great because they can still see the Oran Reef who's coming if it gets to that. I might just cast Sarulf first if that's the case. Opponent could also be going for Alrund's Epiphany now that they hit set. No, they're going for the Doomscar first. We'll go for the Oran Reef Ooze first, see if our opponent counters this. I'm pretty sure they do. I can then just Balaged Recovery it. I might want to save it for the Nissa though, so I might just play Sarulf then drop the land. Yeah, put the... Oh, if our opponent... Okay, opponent does not bounce it, so we do get to replay our Moss Pit Skeletons. Well, over time. We're not exactly drawing new cards, but we're not exactly in a great need to do so. So with that reasoning, we're gonna hold back on Sarulf for the time being. So next turn, it's just... Also the reason I'm willing to do this, our opponent's actual pressure is gonna be the Hall of Storm Giants at this rate. I might swing with the Ooze for get them to trigger that. Okay, they're going for Kaya. Probably just exile the Ooze. Yeah, they're gonna exile it. So 1, 2, 3. So we're gonna go Binding first. If my guess is that they do have a counter, we just recover it next turn. Now, alternately, I can play the Sarulf now, force them to have something as a follow-up. We'll hold back on the recovery first. Basically, I want to encourage our opponent to start swinging with their Hall of Storm Giants. They probably won't. So, don't worry about... I wouldn't worry too much about this one. This is just a plain 3-3 for all purposes of the intents and purposes of this matchup. Lier to buy back a bunch of spells. Saw it coming. Nope. Saw it coming is not in the buyback list.
I got you.
Divide by 0 is... So I'm going to cast this first, force our opponent to divide by 0. Also, oh yeah, spells can't be countered, but our opponent's forced to divide by 0. The spells can't be countered goes both ways. Yeah, he's forced to divide by 0. Goes for the mascot exhibition. We buy back the binding. No attacks for now. Opponent could just get rid of Kaya, exile Sarulf. That doesn't quite do much. It'll help if I can get one counter on Sarulf if our opponent decides to go for the exhibition. It doesn't help that it only it requires our opponent to, the other alternative is find a way to put a counter on Sarulf, which is doable, like with say with Ranger class we can do that. Then we can set up an upkeep. Opponent goes for the mascot exhibition.
Ghosting feels weird, I know.
So now we snipe Kaya. And is this a permanent an opponent controls? Ooh. Saruf will get a counter here. We'll just drop a Moss Pit Skeleton for the time being also. We'll take a bit of a hit, but from the looks of this, we'll be able to snipe Kaya. Then we can, on upkeep, nuke the counter to nuke the tokens. It actually feels like in my best interest to nuke, to not nuke Lier quite yet.
I'm just gonna...
Our opponent could have a Fading Hope, which would be annoying. It'll mess our plans a bit, but it's not too bad quite yet. Yeah, our opponent seems like they do have something. Yeah, they have a Fading Hope. So it goes back in hand, so we'll be taking a bit of a beating. We'll see how our opponent spends their spells here. We could do binding again, target the Lier this time, finally get rid of all of this. Opponent swinging with all three. We're gonna trade with the Moss Pit. Opponent goes for another mascot exhibition. Actually, based on that, now there's a bit of an anti-timing here because our opponent could respond with their 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Let's see if they realize that they could just bounce this. No, they let it go. Now let's see. Probably don't want the second one. Question is 4, 8. If our opponent has a way to bounce this, oh, it's in hand, so they can actually just replay this, then replay the Fading Hope. Yeah, technically we're... Oh, they have a Soul Tracker anyway. Yeah, double mascot exhibition. One of the weaknesses of this green-black build is by not running snow mana, we are not running board wipes. It's something that we probably should consider. As in the deck is much more controlling. It's like instead of having to worry about spot removal, we should probably run a board wipe here or there. If I were to make the cuts to fit those board wipes, it would most likely be the odd ones like the Saruf, the Oran Reef Ooze. Cut those two, probably put 2 blood on the snow in that way. It will also allow me to change up some of the removal. We're definitely gonna keep this one first. Lead on green. Play the Contortionist Troop later. Now that's a sad sight. Not hitting our mana. Yeah, now that I think of it, the Inkcaster might be a bit greedy. Probably a good reason to... If our opponent wants to kill that, it's fine. Blood Chief's Curse. We're waiting for our opponent to do their follow-up big stuff. Duress, so we will lose our Blood Chief's Curse, which is fine. So we go for the Sarulf. Opponent probably still has a kill spell here. Black-green does work better as a control deck. Go blank, discard 2 cards. So we'll whatever we did, yeah, we'll discard the Woodland Chasm, sadly. So we hit a Moss Pit Skeleton. So we're gonna just start going face, but we are in trouble. Timely Control. Binding the Old God, we'll lose Sarulf, and our opponent's about to ramp. Yeah, we're in trouble. At least we hit the land. If our opponent has another go blank, it would be annoying. This is a good way to do it as a control deck, though. I will admit. So we're missing 1 land for the Froghemoth. Opponent's going to scry. Yeah, now our opponent's probably going to do 1 of 2. Oh, Burning Moon Demon. One in hand, the other in graveyard. So Froghemoth's not gonna punch through. I can swing with both. Opponent probably just blocks the bigger one. So opponent's going for the Elixir or Fright. We're gonna put the Elixir in hand. Yeah, hitting another skeleton's not ideal. Now our opponent's in a position where they could just sit back. We do have a few turns up on them though. Yeah, I don't see them attacking anytime soon. They might have a combat trick. Colony ambush to fight. Which is actually fine because that means I am free to swing with every opponent is not gonna block. Opponent wanted to preserve their graveyard, I guess. Opponent is gonna not gonna try to raise us quite yet. We don't have lethal because of these. Like I could swing with these two. Our opponent's forced to block the larger one. But we put our opponent down to 4 and then 6. Gonna get the Froghemoth again. Opponent's gonna scry. Yeah, now that I think of it, Cosmos Elixir is a good way to help our deck out. It's yet another rare though. Opponent goes for their own Nissa. If they play a land, they could buy back Terror Grid, which is annoying. Make it a creature, probably swing for a tree. Which probably... So I'm really concerned what that last card is. Now because of the Witherbloom Campus is always on. Yeah, we're taking our opponent down to 2, then up to 4. But we're gonna need more help, otherwise we're not getting there. That Burning Rune Demon's doing quite a bit of work. Also note our opponent can just buy back Terra Grid anytime they want to. And that would be a really big problem if that happens. We need to hit removal. And like, yeah, we haven't hit any removal at all. No, we had one piece, but it got this duressed out. Opponent has their own removal, so we're not punching through anytime soon. Opponent might actually want to cash in their Nissa. Yeah, they did. They're gonna cash it in for Terra Grid.
Every branch and bone fights for Zendikar.
We go back up to 4. We hit our own Nissa. We don't have the land to buy back the Froghemoth, but we're pretty much doing this just to catch our opponent down to 1.
The swamps come to my aid.
Opponent can kill Nissa. It does keep us alive if that happens. Opponent has another Mortality Spear. Takes out the Nissa, so we are forced to double block. Oh no, we can't because this has Menace too. So yeah, there we go. We got... Opponent did the Nissa better. Could we run Terra Grid? Technically we could. Again, it's more controlling build. You would have to discard the entire +1/+1 counter team, which at this point I'm not opposed to. It's starting to look like a good idea to just ditch that old plan altogether in favor of a new one. Not something you want to hear if you're just starting out and you're getting these decks for the first time. You're getting your feet wet into Magic the Gathering arena for the first time. But sometimes that's how it is. You don't always get the best decks on hand. Also, we were unfortunate not to hit our other removal spells. We were hitting a bit of action. It's unfortunate that we hit too many Moss Pit Skeletons, but sometimes that's how it goes. So this is very scary. Only two lands to start with, but we do have a little early action. So the play is Werewolf Pack Leader, so that's perfectly fine for us because our Singleton Blood Chief's worst Terse does some work, and we just played the Swarm Shambler. Now we can do a Contortionist Troop, which feels really... Ooh, Total R. We did hit our mana. We have to cast something, or else... Oh wait, there we go. Aggro Constrictor. Cheap way to get some damage through. We're probably not going to do any blocks, so we are praying for mana at this point. Wanna go Cinder? Ooh, Cinderclasm. Okay, let's see. And our opponent gets to draw a card off that. Let's see if we can hit the mana for... No, we did not hit the mana for it. Again, we're forced to cast something, or else we just get run over. Let's see if... Yeah, our opponent only gets the... Reckless Storm. Let's see how our opponent swings. Werewolf Pack Leader. Yeah, they'll draw a card. It'll actually draw a second one after this resolves. After combat resolves. But at least we get rid of the Tovalar. Not sure if that's the correct one in hindsight, because the Reckless Storm Seeker is a problem. Actually, no. The big problem is our... missing mana. So now we should be able to get a Grakmaw and a Contortionist. Ooh, Eska's Chariot. Yeah, this is the new Gruul. Yeah, we got domed out way too early. So get Forest, but I don't think that's gonna do much. We get to buy it back. Not sure if I want that or something else, considering we're going to get hit white. We'll buy it back. Yeah, thankfully it does not give trample unless it's in the night side. Ren and 7 isn't. Oh wow, Ren and 7 make a token. Eska's Chariot. Okay. Yeah, this is pretty much over. Again, I would say, yeah, it's not a great run. We ran into decks with back-to-back mythics and all that. So, but at least we have a good understanding of what it takes for the deck to work, what it takes for the deck not to work. If my honest assessment is that, yeah, same as before. The +1/+1 counter decks are kind of out on the way out unless something were to happen in the next sets. So I don't expect any real support for this one. That said, if you are insistent in continuing with this deck, well, definitely we'll move the Saruf to the sideboard at this rate. We want to pretty much add another... Yeah, pretty much want another Ranger class at this point. The Ranger class simply helps out way too much. So that said, we want the other binding in the sideboard. We want to have a few copies of Power Word Kill in the matchups where we are not... Power Word Kill in the matchups where we're not running up against angels and whatnot. So having a few extra kill spells is pretty good. So what other... As far as cheaper sideboard additions, like we could add Pelaka Predation if... No, let's not do Predation. We probably can add more... We probably can add cards like Duress to... If our opponent is way more controlling. And likewise, we can opt... If we feel like we need additional lands, I would go for the Malakir Rebirth instead. Tangled Florahedron, we are at 3 copies. I don't think I want to add that as the extra one. Other ways we can benefit off counters, well, there's the Null Hunter, but that's very weak. Emergent Sequence, the one I put on this, probably can come in. Like if we know that we need to do a quick rush up, that's a plan. If we... The Prosperous Innkeeper also kind of helps. Actually, I could see this as a recommendation over the Tangled Florahedron at times. I'd probably add another recovery at this point. Rune of Might, +1/+1 trample, draw a card. Not exactly that kind of fan there. Hound Tamer is kind of worth a shot if you suspect your opponent's in werewolves. Also, you can, though it's really there just for the +1/+1 counter. It's kind of hard to recommend that. Honestly, the one I really want to recommend is Field Trip, but that's really more for a landfall deck. The Master Symmetrist is one of the questionable cards there. So Wolf's Pack made to draw cards, not so much. Nissa's Zendikon, not great at 4 mana. Wandering Troubadour. Fastwood Surge, nope, we're not hitting 8 mana anytime soon. This is easily a place you can put the Ren in 7 instead of the Turn Timber Symbiosis. Not Leyline Invocation if you need big ones. Not really either. Probably just add the No, the problem is, yeah, that's a very underwhelming rare. Mortality Spear, we don't have much ways of gaining life, but it is a Diagraph Rebirth. This is very expensive for what it does. Shesra, not so great. I can see an argument for Skeletal Swarming if you have more copies than just the one. Grizzly Ghoul can come into play with +1 counter, but that just makes it a 5/4. Yeah, that's the thing. There isn't really much for the +1/+1 counters deck. I'm really surprised they went for that instead of the Pest deck. I think the reason they did that is because they did not want to give everyone a 7-card sideboard in addition to the 60 cards. In other words, yeah, they're just being a little bit stingy there. But based on that, it's very hard to find good ones. I don't even want to put the Duel of Dominant. I pretty much just want to put more creatures in at this point. But again, it's very hard to recommend creatures that are not rare. You're pretty much forced to play rares. If you do go for the snow route, another play is to do the Boreal Outrider. It does make all your creatures enter the battlefield with +1/+1 counters. Could still not great. It really could be better than that. I think I'd probably just add Outland Liberators to give ourselves some artifact enchantment removal. But as you can see, it's really hard to make any good recommendations for this one. Again, be on the lookout for more +1/+1 counter cards in green-black, but otherwise, as is, it's not an easy sell. And that's pretty much it. That's gonna be it for this episode, the Magic Arena Run. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications and whatnot. Yes, we're gonna continue this hard and arduous road. I don't know how many other rares people. Maybe I set my bar too low at that many rares. Maybe I should have just upped the count even more. But if you consider it, that's like 9 rare wild cards and 2 mythic rare cards. If I put any more, you're probably better off just building another deck from scratch. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you guys again next time. Take care. God bless. Stay safe wherever you are. Have a great week, everyone.